Hello, everyone. Just want to welcome you to our podcast. Special guest speaker this morning is going to be Laz Gonzalez from SiriusDecisions. This is Michael Coscetta, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for StructuredWeb. And before we dive in with Laz, just want to introduce our topic, which is the buyer's journey within the channel. And we're going to focus today really on a few different aspects of both the buyer's journey and how it impacts the channel and how it impacts B2B marketing in general. This podcast is hosted by StructuredWeb, channel marketing experts since 1999, and we're very happy and very excited to have Laz Gonzalez from SiriusDecisions here this morning. Laz, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Michael. How you doing?
Doing excellent. Thank you. And before we dive in, I think Laz deserves really a thorough bio. Laz has just got an interesting title change. He's in charge of quite a bit now at SiriusDecisions, which is one of the leading B2B advisory firms for both marketing, sales, and product. Laz is the Group Service Director for Channel Sales and Marketing Strategies, really overseeing the entire practice that has to do with channel. Channel sales, being, of course, highly focused on enablement, highly focused on sales training, and product focus, and, of course, the marketing side, having to do with how the buyer's journey has changed quite a bit, how to tackle it, and obviously anything within the channel adds a level of complexity to the mix. And before joining SiriusDecisions, Laz headed up all North American channels for Unipress Software, which eventually was acquired by BMC. Prior to that, he was Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing for a financial company selling high-speed trading platforms. And prior to that, he was VP of Alliances and OEM Programs at Viewpoint, along with a very long list and a very thorough resume, including something as prestigious as the United States Air Force Academy. So very excited to have Laz on the webcast this morning. So Laz, thank you again for joining, and thank you for agreeing to let us pick your brain here for a half hour.
Hey, no problem, Michael. Thanks a lot.
So Laz, it's pretty clear in your experience, not only in the field, but now that you're doing quite a bit of advisory and consulting work within your role, that you've really seen quite a bit of change. You've been in the business for a long time. You have several decades of B2B marketing experience, several decades of B2B sales. You've focused for many years on the channel. Let's start big picture first. What are some of the really big changes that you've seen across the channel, both in channel marketing and channel sales, that you think are really groundbreaking changes that we can talk about today?
Big question. Let me first qualify the answer I'm about to give, right? Like many of the practitioners probably listening to this podcast, I too was working like you, trying to maximize channel marketing's effectiveness with partners and at the suppliers. Today, a SiriusDecisions analyst may have 6 or 7 calls per day with some of the leading channel programs. So on our team, you can imagine, we're having 10 to 20 calls per day. And when we hear it from one company, we may hear that from 3 or 4 companies as well. So you take the topic of, let's say, channel marketing investment, and you take the last 7 years worth of calls that we've been getting from our clients, inquiries, how do we do this, how do we measure that? That's where we're going to formulate our answers to some of the questions that you're going to ask here. But the big picture things, I would say, if you took a look at channel marketing, aside from the fact that it's being redefined in terms of a function within an organization, I think that one of the big things that we're seeing organizations do is, first of all, there is this major shift towards partner-led demand. Companies realize that we can't do it all for them, so we cannot create demand, awareness, accelerate deals. We need to work with those partners so that we can look at ways that they can drive that demand. So I think that's a really big picture change. It's almost a sea change within the channel itself, that suppliers are looking for those partners to step up right, on the marketing side and lead the charge in terms of demand. So, and because of this, we now start seeing investments in platforms, tools, processes, people, to make sure that those partners are enabled from a marketing perspective to take on that role. So that's one of the big issues that we see. Another thing that we see is a lot more accountability. You know, channel marketing is no longer a fuzzy math function, right? It's not something where organizations now can simply step their way through helping partners market and move from tactic, right? So all of a sudden now, companies are buckling down and becoming more accountable. So we see channel marketing trying to measure itself, trying to prove its value to the organization, trying to show their contribution. And that's manifesting itself in dashboards and measurements. And I'll share two with you, for example, cost per lead, right? Now organizations are saying, well, you know, if I have $1 or €1 and I want to invest that in a channel marketing program, what is it going to cost me to drive that demand for one lead? And when we're talking about lead, we're talking about a marketing qualified, if not a sales accepted lead.
Right.
So, you know, that becomes sort of a litmus test. So do I do more events? Do I do inbound? Do I do outbound? Do I do digital? And what's it going to cost me? Because I only have a finite amount to invest here. And so cost per lead becomes a real metric that companies look at. Another one I just mentioned is marketing's contribution to pipeline. Channel marketing has to be responsible for filling the top of the funnel in many cases for the partner. They don't have the skills, they have gaps in their capabilities, they have lack of resources, they have 7 different suppliers trying to get them to market. So if you think about that, Michael, channel marketing has to start saying, okay, what is going to be my contribution and how far should I measure it? And a lot of our clients measure it all the way through the pipeline. So they say, you know, what's marketing's contribution to pipeline? So if I take that $1 and I now want to invest it in a program and I'm looking for the ROI of that investment, then it becomes how far can I track it, right? Can I track it all the way to close business? In some cases you can't because you may not have visibility into whether or not that lead closed after it's passed over to sales. But you can track it in terms of how quickly or how many make it to the pipeline itself. So that's all the way to deal registration. So can I create programs that generate leads that partners can take and further qualify and then report back to us this is now a legitimate pipeline opportunity. And from there, they're looking for pipeline to close. So I think, you know, those two things, the partner-led demand and the greater accountability, I think are also two of the big factors. But there's one other, and this is now starting to change itself, is the extension of marketing automation into the channel. I mean, at SiriusDecisions, maybe 5-6 years ago, we started really looking at how companies like Eloqua, Marketo, et cetera, were all, you know, extending their marketing tools into the, you know, the organization as a whole. Now we're seeing that make its way into the channel. So, you know, companies like yourself, StructuredWeb, making those tools available to some of the partners and suppliers. I think that we see a greater preponderance of these tools now, and I think it's becoming accepted that, you know, companies who may already have a marketing automation platform are not going to give their partners a login to their Eloqua, for example.
Sure.
They're going to need to be more prescriptive, they're going to be more self-service, and they're going to need partner-friendly tools that allow that partner to become a better marketer. So those are the 3 things I think that are really big. You know, the shift to partner-led demand, the greater accountability around measurement, and really this extension of marketing automation into the channel are 3 really big changes that we're seeing over the last few years.
Yeah, Laz, those are great points, and we're seeing a lot of the same just in feedback and questions from our customers that are coming and asking, you know, how can we help them implement some of those changes. Now, you mentioned something very key there. It was the first point, which was really the shift toward partner-led demand, because the vendors and the OEMs know they can't quite get it done for all their partners. It's just not possible. It's not scalable. But I think one of the holy grail challenges for most OEMs and for most channel organizations is, again, how do I get my partners to do more marketing? How do I keep them active? How do I keep them engaged? What can I do for them that really motivates them or pushes them or makes it easy for them to engage in marketing? What are you seeing at SiriusDecisions that has either been a best practice implementation of bridging that partner engagement gap, or what are some of the things or some of the trends you're seeing to really get partners to engage in more marketing?
Well, I think that suppliers are wisening up on this point, and they're realizing that just talking about their products is not going to get partners more engaged. I think the big shift is really understanding what that partner is made up of and showing them what's in it for them. So I think that organizations are talking less about themselves and their products and sharing information about those products and their business model to the partner, making it very clear to them, listen, if you do this, here's the gain. So really stepping out of their way to understand the partner's journey, which is different than the journey the supplier sees, right? The supplier, we have a recruitment waterfall framework that we use with a lot of companies, and it describes 6 distinct stages in the evolution of a partner. Things like suspect to prospect, to qualified, to committed, to engaged, to producing, right? So that's the supplier's view. But the partner looks at it a little differently, right? They don't see themselves as the suspect. They see themselves as being offered something. There's an offer being made. And at that point, there is a commitment stage that follows, but that's quickly weighed against other initiatives that they're engaged in. So really what it is, if you really want to capture the mind share of the partner, you have to understand their journey, just like you would the buyer. And we see organizations really taking this into stride, factoring it into all their plans. And the idea is that, really focusing on that partner's journey is key. And then avoiding random acts of marketing, right? Think about it. If you're a partner and you're working with 3 suppliers, it almost seems like each one of them is coming at you with some new shiny toy that they want you to focus on. If you think about it, it might be today we're doing some event for supplier A, tomorrow we're doing sales calls with supplier B, the next day we're doing some marketing with supplier C, and there's no continuity, right? And so from the partner's perspective, it's just about how do I carve up my time to meet my obligations. And, the suppliers themselves, they reinforce this by continually just kind of regurgitating on the partner whatever assets, whatever programs they have. A lot of times this is coming from the product teams. So, my advice and basically what we see those partners reacting to is this randomness. So let's avoid that, right? Let's be very prescriptive. If you have a partner and they're going to engage with you over a period of time to drive a launch, for example, well then keep them engaged, right? Offer them the understanding, the knowledge, the training that they need to have to execute. Take them right from there through the concierge to the menu of plays that they'll be executing. Let them know that after you execute one of these plays, we'll be right there with you over the next 2 weeks, and we'll be checking in with you to see the disposition of those leads. And so that to the partner, it looks like, wow, these guys really thought this thing through, and there's several steps here. So this isn't just something that I'm going to do today and then forget about it for the next 3 months. So I think the key to that engagement is understanding that journey and then really leading that partner step by step. And that's why you see things like concierge services becoming so prevalent.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Laz, you hit a couple of really important points there, but I think just a bigger question is how do you think, so if the focus is going to be on the partner and the suppliers and the vendors need to be very prescriptive. I think the prescription has changed a little bit, and how have you seen the partner itself change and the role of the partner within these organizations and within these channel ecosystems? You've been doing this for a very long time. How has the partner changed over the years that the suppliers can keep in mind when they're making these prescriptive recommendations and programs to the partners?
Well, I think the partners realizing that their business is changing, right? I mean, if you take cloud, for example, the economic model is changing. They need to find the right skills in their organizations or re-engineer themselves. And that means that, you're going to see less cold callers, less salespeople trying to knock on doors with, the targets and prospects that they don't know, to really understanding that, hey, there's a different way that buyer is buying today than they did 5 years ago. And today, there's a role for marketing to play in the early stages of that relationship with that buyer. And a lot of times that relationship is digital, right? It's the guy's not coming to you, and it's clearly you don't know about him, so you can't knock on his door. So how do you find him, right? And it takes certain skills to be able to create, for example, an inbound marketing program, a multi-touch digital program. And I think partners are recognizing this. For the last 3 years, my colleagues and I have been asked to participate in a lot of keynote addresses for, big partner summits and meetings, and they always want us to kind of focus in on how the seller is changing, how the buyer is changing, and let partners know the meaning of marketing, let them understand, what impact it can have. And so we've been doing this now for many years, and I think the message is getting across. I think that now partners are saying, hey, marketing is important. I need help, and I need the skills. So I see them kind of tooling up for this effort on the marketing side. At the same time, there are other factors that are disrupting their economic model, like the shift to the cloud. So again, that's going to require that they have a relevant conversation with their customers around what the cloud means to them. And that's not a product pitch, right? That's a business process pitch. And sometimes that message has to come across very, resounding. So they need to have some expertise in that. They need to make sure that they put a salesperson in front of that customer who's not just going to talk about, the new cloud solution, but having a conversation about how this can change their business or how this can transform, and having some real concrete examples that they can share, for example, thought leadership tactics, case studies and references in the early stages of that buyer's journey, that marketing can help them create and help them deliver. So I think those are two big changes, the retooling of the partner and also the economic model that's changing for partners right now.
Yeah, and you just really predicted my next question, Laz, which was, how does the cloud really change the partner? And you started to answer that, and I wanted to dig deeper into at least the role that, again, the suppliers can play in the marketing with that partner. So any thoughts as to how the supplier can better enable the partner to be active and present earlier in the buyer's journey? Because like you said, these people aren't showing up at a storefront. They're not knocking on your door. Cold calling is not going to work nearly as effectively. What are certain things suppliers can do for that partner that keeps that partner now active in the best practice form of marketing, with the cloud and how the cloud has really changed the buyer's journey?
So this is a question we get asked often. And the first thing, let me share some data with you. We found that organizations that train their partners before they engage in marketing are likely to drive 3 times the engagement than organizations that don't. And I'm not talking about, train them 1 week and then a month later offer them participation in a campaign. I'm really talking about just-in-time training, where I'm training you today, and after the training is over, someone's reaching out to you and saying, hey, let's put that knowledge into play. Here are some campaigns or some programs we'd like you to participate in, and doing that with a concierge. So that training is really important, and it's important in terms of two things. It's important in terms of the questions that the partner will receive from prospects as they start engaging with them in the cloud, and how to answer those questions, right? It's a lot about that buyer's journey and what are the different questions that they have at each stage of that journey. And then also the talk track. How do they begin the conversation? And I think that one thing that suppliers really need to focus on when they're delivering this knowledge to partners is helping partners create the right type of demand. You know, demand type is a subject that is, you know, a cornerstone in cloud marketing for the channel. Demand type basically says, look, there's three ways that you can buy a product or position it. The first one is that it's an established market product. For example, storage. We all know what storage is. We know that we have to use it. We know that it gets consumed easily. Therefore, our infrastructure requires that we continue adding storage or using it differently. Now, if you think about that, you don't have to convince someone that they have to buy storage. That's an established market. There's a line item budget that they, you know, factor for each time. So when you are selling a physical product like storage and you say, here is the solution, you don't necessarily have to explain why they need it. That's an established market. You have to focus in on competitiveness. Why is it better than the competitors? What are the, you know, the things about this product that make them right for me? Now in comes the cloud, and now that physical storage that you are selling becomes a service.
Right.
And we call that change a paradigm. So it's a demand type, is new paradigm there. And what happens in this situation now is that the customer is, all right, they understand they need storage, but they need to be taught why they need storage in the cloud, right? And that's a process change. And when the demand type changes like that, the conversation changes. So teaching partners to have the right conversation around the business process rather than the product is the biggest challenge here. When you think about this, partners have been trained for many, many years to sell products.
Sure.
And now we're asking them, hey, you need to sell a solution, and it's part product, part service, and you can't just lead with the product. You have to talk about the business. And I think that's a big change for a lot of suppliers and a lot of partners. It means retooling their skills. It means, you know, having the right conversation. And look at it this way. It's not that hard. I mean, think about creating call scripts for partners or giving them answers to frequently asked questions along that journey that the buyer is taking. You know, what does this change mean for my business? How am I going to apply it? How can I measure the results? These are going to be things that suppliers could do to really mitigate this this paradigm shift, to use the word again, between, you know, what was an established market to something that is new paradigm. And I think that that's a subtlety that a lot of organizations haven't really applied yet. You know, they know this is different. They know the partner needs to sell solutions, but where do they start? And I think this demand type is a real important concept, and you know, we certainly have research and frameworks around it that people can look at.
Yeah, you guys are really leading the way, you know, I think in the thought leadership in this area. You spurred a question in my mind about the training aspect and the enablement aspect, because when you said these partners require new training, new forms of enablement and help through the buyer's journey, which undoubtedly has become, you know, a dynamic thing, and it's becoming more complex with marketing in general. But if you're a big supplier and you have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of channel partners, as I know many of your clients do, it's almost impossible to really think about scaling the training and the enablement of all of them. But what we've seen is a significantly changed role of the distributor in this market and in this ecosystem. Can you share just any observations you have working with your clients as to how the distributors are now playing a very different role in helping these partners and enabling the partners, because obviously their role has changed quite a bit over the past 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, when you think about distribution, you know, the first thoughts are pack, pick, or pick, pack, and ship, right?
Right.
So you start thinking about the logistics aspect of the distributor, and that was okay when you were talking about physical products. But now the buyer's changing, the products are changing, and the one thing that remains the same is that distributor rep is talking to a lot of partners, right? They are that single point of contact within the distributor that has access to hundreds of partners. And that relationship is there. And because it's there, they can influence the partner. They can recommend products. They can enroll them into training. They can do all sorts of things with that partner. But that's traditional. What's changing is now a couple of things. First of all, data. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
The distributor is sitting on a mountain of data. They keep track of all the transactions. They know which partners sold to what customers, in which verticals, in which regions, and so on. And I think they're beginning to wake up to the fact that this is important to suppliers. Now, it used to be that the economic model that the distributor would apply here didn't match the need of the customer. So if a supplier came to a distributor and said, listen, I want to target 1,000 partners for this campaign, the distributor would say, great, we can pull a list of partners who have sold into the same buying center, and we'll charge you $53,000 to go execute that campaign. Now, you see, that doesn't work because the supplier is thinking, well, shouldn't you be applying that data anyway? Why am I getting nickels and dimes for this investment?
Right.
And so the smart distributors are starting to create dashboards and analytics that suppliers can use. For example, Arrow's got the Arrow Insights, which allows buyers to really cut the data and say, look, my product sells really well to someone who just bought virtualization, for example. So if there's a buyer and they just virtualize their environment, I would like to sell them virtualized storage, right? So I need to find out who are the partners, which are the customers, where are they, and target them. And using these dashboards, Arrow is now helping clients figure that out and really hone in on those types of programs. So I think data is huge. Another side you mentioned is the enablement, right? So sales enablement, companies still have wide definitions about sales enablement and training, but one of the things that I like about distribution now is because they are starting to learn more about that customer, and they're factoring that in their training programs for partners. So you take somebody like Avnet, for example, who created the Pathways training, and that is really applicable to partners who want to move into healthcare or education, and they have this whole training program for partners to come in and become, certified in these different areas. I think that takes the burden off of the supplier to try to get that partner to become an expert, and really raises that value that the distributor is bringing to the picture. So the enablement side, moving into new verticals, moving into new customer segments like SMB, I think that's another place where they can play as well. And then last is demand. So if you think about it, distributors are also implementing marketing platforms and tools and really starting to take a hand in creating lead-generating campaigns for suppliers. The big challenge, though, for them is, and I don't think that it's been solved yet, is that it behooves the distributor, if you look at it from their perspective, to do it all the same with all the different brands. Right? So if they think about it, they can't create a unique campaign for everyone. They don't have the bandwidth to do that. So they create these homogeneous campaigns that suppliers can participate in. I mean, it's the proverbial, let's have the desktop roadshow, right? And everybody's going to be there, and all the suppliers are in one room with the desktop showing up all their products. And that really doesn't give that supplier the chance to differentiate. So I think what you're going to see more is more customized programs for brands that allow that supplier to kind of change the wording, change the message, change the tactics, but still use maybe some of the core infrastructure to deliver. So I think that that's still a bridge that hasn't been crossed, because I don't see a lot of companies doing that right yet. But I would say, the data, the analytics, the sales enablement, and the last piece around demand are three ways that these distributors are focusing on this.
Well, that's definitely a changing market, and there's no doubt that everyone is kind of in flux, and I don't think it'll ever stop. I think it's just, you know, the market changes with technology. Technology changes the buyer. You know, the buyer is now probably more in control, you know, than ever before. And it's fascinating to watch how suppliers are reacting, how the distributors have to react, how the channel partners are reacting. And Laz, as we wrap up here, just to take it backward and go back to big picture, any other thoughts that you could share just on again, the overall changing buyer's journey, and any other best practices that you're seeing within the channel? Who's doing it the best? What are some other great examples that you could share so that listeners to this can say, wow, that's a great place I can follow up. That's a great example. I can do that within my organization. Any last minute kind of great examples that you could share where people can go look for more evidence and more understanding of how to do this right?
You know, the best pieces of advice are usually the simplest ones, right? And I think that there's still a lot of randomness, and I kind of mentioned this before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with these new capabilities, suppliers are able to create more content, more programs, and this yields more activity. But is it the right activity, right? I think that, you know, a lot of suppliers still take the spray and pray approach, where they create all this content and then they just kind of spray that out into the channel and hope that, you know, some partners will take it and use it effectively. I think that it's about the buyer. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about what can I do differently based on what I'm hearing here, is really take those programs, take that content, and align it back to the journey that that buyer is having with the partner. So in the early stages, when they're looking at committing to change, loosening the status quo, that's that education phase. Look for the tactics and the programs that are most effective in the early stages. For example, thought leadership, things like social syndication, and possibly customer references and case studies, because if you're trying to convince somebody to do something in their industry, the best thing you can do is show them somebody else who just did this and succeeded.
Sure.
Right? That's very convincing. Yet we see organizations creating these case studies, these thought leaderships, and just kind of handing them over to partners, and partners just kind of using it regardless of where that buyer is in the process and saying, hey, guess what? I've got this great case study I want to show you. I know that we're way into the selection phase and now you're narrowing down your choices. My question is that the best tactic to offer the partner? Shouldn't we be training the partner a little bit more on when to use these tactics? So, for example, a competitive matrix might be better at the selection stage than a case study.
Sure.
Right? And so that buyer's journey alignment is really looking at, you know, the stages of education, selection, and validation, looking at the key questions. So if you're sitting there, think about it. Divide this journey into three parts. Think about what happens in that first part. What are the tactics that resonate best? And create programs, not just tactics that you can give partners. So a thought leadership awareness program, a social syndication program, a customer reference program, something that the partner knows is here to stay. It's a process that you can engage them with rather than just, here's a case study you can use. And then they get into that selection phase, then again, you know, create some competitive differentiators that allow them to really guide that customer through the process and share some of the answers to the questions that they may have, like, you know, why should I choose you? And then ultimately, when you get to that last stage, which is the validation stage, now the buyer is narrowing down their choices. They really want to, you know, prove the ROI or the total cost of ownership, and that's where we need those tools. So take an inventory of all your tactics, break them up into these three stages, think about how you're delivering them to the partner, and you'll see your marketing become more effective if you take this approach.
Right. Well, Laz, you said in 34 minutes of time, you added, I think, so much value to anyone who listens to this. And I really just want to thank you again for not only your time, your advice, your expertise, and of course, as always, afterwards, if there are any questions, there are very easy ways to find us. Again, myself, Michael.Coscetta at StructuredWeb.com, and of course, Laz Gonzalez at SiriusDecisions, Laz.Gonzalez, all Z's, at SiriusDecisions.com. And Laz, I believe you're going to be traveling quite a bit. And any events or any places that our listeners can find you or spot you in the next couple of months?
Oh, absolutely. You know, our business is growing. We are holding forums and summits all over the world. In July, I'll be in London on the 7th for a partner forum on partner experience. So really, if you're interested in knowing what that partner experience is like, dovetails off the customer experience, we'll be doing that in London and in Amsterdam on the 7th and 9th. Later on, we'll be going back there in October, and Maria Chen will be joining me for the SiriusDecisions European Summit. But more forums and webcasts to come. Just visit us at SiriusDecisions.com.
Excellent. And as always, if you need anything channel marketing related, channel marketing automation related, platform related for your channel, you can find us at StructuredWeb.com for anything. We would love to speak to you. Laz, thank you again for the time. Appreciate your brain, your experience, and really your tremendous analysis of the market. Great points, and definitely look forward to continuing this series with our webcasts later in the summer and early in the fall.
Okay, Michael, thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you, Laz. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.